On today's show, the Clippers took down the Nuggets, but does it even matter? And the Warriors might have just ended the Rockets season, and Julius Randle season is most certainly over. Plus, a first-hand look at Joel Embiid, all of that and more on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Friday. Wes Goldberg here with Imedoka. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Let's start in Los Angeles, where the Clippers beat the Nuggets 102-100. The Nuggets stormed back in the fourth quarter, and Nikola Jokic missed a long three-pointer to potentially win the game, but the Clippers got it done. No Kawhi for the Clippers, no Jamal Murray for the Nuggets. Clippers firmly in that 4 seed. Adam, the Nuggets now a half game back of the Timberwolves for the 1 seed. We're going to touch on the Wild Western Conference, as we always do. We're going to get to Joel Embiid in his second game back. We're going to get to the Julius Randle injury news here. But let's start with Clippers Nuggets. What was your takeaway from this one?
Well, because this is the team I cover most closely, Denver, they've been running out of steam. They've had the best record post All-Star break. But this last 5, 6, 7 games or so, you really see they burst out of that All-Star break playing some of the best basketball, really rounding into form. Jamal Murray's missed, I believe, the last 8 games now, 7 or 8 games. And the team has just run out of gas here. And I think that was the story tonight. You saw Denver wearing down. If you want to go with an X's and O's thing that might be interesting should these two teams match up, P.J. Tucker, who has found himself outside the rotation largely, got the nod to go up and try to stop Jokic tonight, play some real minutes against him. And I thought he did a really nice job, especially in that third quarter, just being physical against Jokic and keeping him a little bit away from the paint. Jokic had a tough third quarter. I think he had 36 points of the night, but just 4 in the third quarter, most of that being guarded by P.J. Tucker. So I don't think you take a huge takeaway from that, but it is something you should probably file away and say, if those two teams meet, it looks like the Clippers might try Tucker more than they would against other matchups.
PJ Tucker, man, just carving out roles even at this stage of his career. That dude's a gamer, but he was also the one that was guarding Jokic on that final 3-point heave there that was very similar to the one that he made against the Warriors earlier in the year. And PJ Tucker was not going to have any of that. It was a tough shot either way. So I agree with all of that. I also thought, not to blame it in injuries because it's like not necessarily the most interesting thing, but the Nuggets really missed Jamal Murray. They have been really missing Jamal Murray, but the Clippers, I know they were out without Kawhi, but they made their big run while Jokic was out and DeAndre Jordan was on the court, and there was just like no Jokic, no Jamal Murray equals no offense, kind of a rough night for Reggie Jackson, a rough night for MPJ, and so you add all those things together, and it was like, all right. But no breaking news here. And you mentioned kind of like, okay, they get out of the All-Star break, they go on a little bit of run, and now they're starting to run out of steam, maybe take it easy a little bit. Sounds a lot like last year, Adam, right?
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. Denver took their foot off the gas because they had the 1 seed in the West wrapped up very early in the year. Their extended sort of limp to the finish line, it was a lot more extended last year. This year, it's really just come on in the last week or so with this Nuggets team. So I don't know if it's perfectly analogous. But another thing, and along those same lines, is the question with Denver is their depth. That matters a lot more in the regular season than it does in the playoffs. But tonight they get outscored from the bench 34-9. Just 7 points from Christian Brown, 2 from Peyton Watson, nothing from anybody else off of Denver's bench. As a result, Jokic plays 40 minutes, KCP plays 38, Michael Porter plays 38. Denver is just thin on guys, and that the playoffs should shorten the rotation. But I'm not sure Denver has 8 guys. The playoff rotation is going to be 7 or 8. Denver has 6 solid and a bunch of question marks.
No, it's a great point. And when Jamal Murray is out and Reggie Jackson's not really shooting well, you're looking around, you're like, well, who's the guard? Like, who's our point guard? Because one of them's injured and one of them's not playing all that well. Meanwhile, the Clippers, they played pretty well without Kawhi. Paul George scores 28 points. James Harden gets out of his rut a little bit. It took him 23 shots, but he got 20 points out of it. Also had 8 assists in the game. He was better as the game went on. And then their bench, I mean, if there was a positive for the Clippers all year, it's been their bench, right? Norman Powell's been awesome for them. Russell Westbrook's been awesome for them when he's healthy. Amir Coffey dropped in 9 points off the bench for them too. So they're starting to get their groove a little bit. I don't know if this changes my opinion on the Clippers. I think it certainly qualifies as a statement win for them, right? And if you're a Clippers fan, you probably feel pretty good coming out of this one. I need to see Kawhi healthy, and I need to see this. We saw this team go on a prolonged run, but I still feel like this team is deeply unserious, and I want to see them be serious for a playoff stretch. But they're still going to be dangerous, and it feels like they kind of firmly planted themselves in this 4 seed now, because you look at where they are in the standings. They're 4 games back of obviously the top 3, but they're now 2 games in front of Dallas for that 4 spot. Of course, they could still lose it, but they feel pretty ensconced in that right now. And if you're the Clippers, at least, your top 4, home court, all those things. So that's good for them.
I would say, if you really were wrapping this up, though, to summarize it, because you said it feels like a statement win. I disagree. These late season April games, they're all about survival. Tonight, the game really came down to, Westbrook and Amir Coffey outplayed DeAndre Jordan and Justin Holiday. And that was the game. And does that tell you anything? Probably not. Right. But that was the story of the game tonight.
I'm with you. Let's move on to Houston. The Warriors went into the game with a chance to virtually end the Rockets' playoff hopes, and that's basically what they did. 7 threes from Klay Thompson, 29 points from Steph Curry, 20 points from Trace Jackson-Davis. The Warriors crushed the Rockets by 23 points. The Rockets, they're now 4 games back of the Warriors for that 10 seed, something that looked so attainable at one point. And then you get the Tari Eason thing going on Instagram or whatever and kind of making fun of the Warriors, say that they're coming. And the Warriors were not having any of it. Klay Thompson talked about it. Draymond Green talked about it on his podcast, all these things. And so the Rockets went into this game trying to make up some ground. Instead, the Warriors did Warriors things. The Rockets did Rockets things. And the thing that I took away from this game was Rockets coach Ime Udoka after the game.
Yeah.
Calling out his team. And here's the quote. He goes, "The moment was too big for a lot of players out there. Looked like deer in headlights. Looked either soft or scared. Didn't rise up to the moment like I thought we would." What did you make of that quote, Adam?
Ime is such an interesting coach to me. I'm so fascinated by him because I think he's a great coach. I think he's a very good coach, but he's clearly a tough coach. I don't think he'd be an easy guy to play for. I'm not at all surprised that was his takeaway from this game. It's basically the year's over. It's always funny when you go to an exit interview for a team. And I know this wasn't an exit interview, but it effectively becomes that because the season is over. And you go negative because it's like, who are you talking to? Half these guys won't even be here next year. Some of them won't even be here. But I do feel like there's still a method to his madness. It's a young team. And I feel like there was a little bit of you thought you guys were something with that 11-game win streak or 10 or 11-game win streak you had. You thought that maybe you would learn something. You have a lot more to learn. And it almost felt like a challenge to the guys that he knows will be back, the young players that he knows will be back of. This game is not easy. It is for the toughest of the tough at the highest level. And if you want to just be a fancy player and making a 10-game run at the end to just come up short, that's one thing. But to be great, you're going to have to be even tougher than you were this year. So I feel like it was a tone setter for the offseason, but it was also classic Ime, who I feel like I have a feeling that Ime judges a lot of people and a lot of players for not being tough because he values it so much and because he is one tough SOB.
Maybe I think the best, the kindest read of this is that Udoka is sending a message for something for next year, right? I don't know. I know he's a competitor. That's what you hear all the time about him. This year, he just desperately wanted to make the playoffs. That he didn't take this Rockets job with the idea of rebuilding. They go out, they get Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, all these guys who are competitors like him. I don't love the quote. I don't love. I do wonder who he's talking about specifically when he uses words like soft and scared. It feels like maybe that's more directed towards certain players and not all players on the team, but I don't know. All in all, what's not to love about this season for Houston? Your team won 11 straight after your best player went down, and now you're going to say that they don't have any guts? It doesn't really strike me as truthful, And I get the emotion of it coming after this and that he and they really did want to make the playoffs. But, let's be real, too. They weren't getting out of the play-in tournament. We know what this team was. It was still a great season for the Rockets, all things considered. So, I don't know. It struck me as a little tone deaf, but maybe that's me being cynical. And maybe the way to go about it is to have the more generous read on it. But again, everything we know about Udoka is he's kind of an MFer about this kind of stuff. And this is how he carries himself, and for better or for worse, right? And so
I'm so interested in this message, though, Wes, because I think I might disagree with you. I'm reminded of the scene in The Wire. I remember there's the guy who's realizing that his life is going to have to be getting up every morning at 6 a.m. to go cut grass, and his boss is telling him, yeah, that's the job every day, day after day, and there's no reward. That's what you do. And he's basically telling him, like, you either accept that or you're going to have a life of chasing things. And I feel like that's Ime. He's saying, like, yeah, you guys thought that 10-game thing was cool. Guess what? You have to do that for 82 games now. Mm-hmm. Now you have to play with that intensity and that toughness and everything else. And the moment you think it got over, you're over the hump now, you fall behind. And to me, so I kind of resonate with that message a little bit, especially for a young team that has to learn that lesson of it never gets easy. You just get better at the difficult challenges.
Also, big year for coaches calling their teams soft to the media.
Really is. Big week even.
A big week, just a big week and a half. Moving on, what does Julius Randle's season-ending surgery mean for the Knicks? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for your retirement, you could still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on that 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Last game that we're going to touch on before we get into the Julius Randle news. The 76ers beat the Heat in Miami. Tyrese Maxey had 37 points. He outscored Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo combined. Those two had 34 for Miami. And Joel Embiid in his second game back had 29 points in 32 minutes. Adam, I was at the game tonight in Miami. He still looks a little far away from peak condition.
Yes.
But the difference with him on the court is just huge. Philly is 2-0 in his first 2 games back. What do you make of his return, and do you think that Embiid's return makes the Sixers legitimate contenders in the Eastern Conference?
I mean, those words always mean something different to different people. Like legitimate contender, as in, is it possible for them to do it? Like, I think yes, but it's obviously an uphill climb. I think they're more just wild card. I would call them wild cards. They have the talent, but I think with this game specifically, and I only got to see, sort of the glimpses of this because it's going on while this Denver game is going on. But the thing about Embiid is I know he faded down the stretch a little bit. And that was one of the things I really want to watch in these last 6 games of the year is I'm impressed with how great he looks and how much he looks like he did in January and December. He looks like that already in his 2 games at his best. But the question is going to be like, can you play 40 minutes, which you're going to be asked to do here in 1.5 weeks? You're going to be asked to play 40 minutes. Can you do that, or do you fade a little bit? And at least just looking at the way this game unfolded and how well and how effectively he scored through 2.5 quarters, and then how much it looked like he struggled down the stretch, that's just the thing I want to see if that's a trend and if it improves between now and next Sunday.
And if he can graduate from like those 5-6 minute spurts that he's basically being limited to right now, and man, 4 minutes into these spurts, he's got both hands on his knees in both of these games. And seeing him up close and in person, I think he looks good, like body-wise. Like he looks thin. Like that's got to be promising if you're a Sixers fan. And look, the conditioning thing, it was bound to happen, right? And so we understand it. But how long does it take him to ramp up into, to your point, it's one thing to kind of ramp up into December or January mode. It's another thing to ramp up into playoff mode.
Yeah.
And if this team is going to end up in the play-in tournament, which with this win, by the way, they are now one full game back of Indiana for the 6th seed. And had they lost to Miami, they would have been 3 games back of Indiana and 2 games back of Miami. So they do a lot of work in getting this big win on the road. Like, the 6th seed is in play for them. And if I'm the Sixers, like, you look at all the teams in the East, the team that could use a week off the most might be the Sixers. But at the same time, like, you might want Joel Embiid to get as much run as possible, and maybe a couple play-in games would be good. So we'll see what happens. But obviously, his presence is so big. That free throw line jumper is never left. It's right there. He does so much defensively. He kind of picks and chooses his spots, but just his size just made a difference. There was a number of times where he just like stood in Jimmy Butler's way, and that was enough. Like, he didn't really have to do all that much. He doesn't have to move a lot. He just needs to stay by the rim. So obviously good news. Look, I think it does make them contenders. I think after the Celtics, I don't trust anybody in the Eastern Conference, right? And so if you can get Embiid to 80% of what he was before the injury, and Tyrese Maxey playing this way, why not? You know, like, it wouldn't be the craziest thing to see them make some sort of run here to the Eastern Conference Finals, but we'll see.
I agree with you. And I will just say one last thing on Embiid. The team clearly seems galvanized by having him back. Maxey tonight, 37, 9, and 11. It's been a while since we've seen him put up, that kind of stat line, plus 26. I think that's as big almost in some ways as Embiid's return, as the team has their belief back, or at least it seems like they're getting their belief back.
Let's get to this Julius Randle news. The Knicks announced on Thursday that Randle, who's been out since January 27th after dislocating his right shoulder, is going to end up going under for season-ending shoulder surgery. That's it. The Julius Randle saga is over. He's out for the rest of the year. The good news for him is that he should be able to be back by the start of next season. But speaking of this season, how big of a hit is this for the Knicks, Adam?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. And I hate, one of my least favorite types of commentary is there's a great player, but is the team better without him? Like, you always hate those things. But this is an example where were they to have OG Anunoby back and healthy, I could at least look at that and say, okay, there's an identity to this team that can take shape and can make a run. OG is the one, to me, that him being out, now it compounds with Julius Randle, because now you could use, even if it's a flawed or, okay, do these pieces fit? Doesn't matter. You just need talent, and not having him hurts a lot. So for me, I don't know about the Knicks just because of the OG piece, but it certainly is a bummer that Randle. I'm also not surprised by the Randle news. Like, this one I kind of felt like was always going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of the vibes out of New York, right? As they never really expected Randle to come back. He was trying to avoid this surgery. 2 doctors told him, hey, go get the surgery. If you don't get this surgery, you might end up having permanent damage to this shoulder, so go get the surgery. So it sucks for him on a personal level. It just sucks for him, and he was in the middle of a pretty good year. I don't know that it matters that much for the Knicks. I really don't, and it sucks saying it, but like, if you're the Knicks, maybe like whatever karmic energy you were trying to direct into one direction or the other, I think they were just moving it all into the OG Anunoby direction, because they need him desperately. Like, that's the difference maker for them, because that's the element they didn't have last year. Like, if you think about the Knicks formula for winning games and what it might be to matriculate through the playoffs here, it's Jalen Brunson scores 30+ for us. One of these other dudes, Dante DiVincenzo, McBride, somebody, Bojan Bogdanovic, steps up and scores 20-something points. We just find a second option on a night-to-night basis, and we have an elite defense, and we're just going to grind you into the dirt. And that's their formula. And I'm not really like, Julius Randle could be more consistently that second guy, but there's other guys on this roster that can do that, especially, I think, that's why you make that trade for Bojan Bogdanovic at the deadline, right? Is because it's Julius Randle insurance, because you didn't know if he was going to come back after having that shoulder injury. So I think the formula is still in place without Julius Randle, and it might even clean things up for them. Now, I don't know how much if they ever anticipated Randle coming back, but at least now they know, and they can kind of get over it and move on. And it just sort of cleans up some of the pecking order there too. Like, everybody knows where they stand now behind Jalen Brunson. Everybody knows their role. And so, look, it's not like I was picking the Knicks to come out of the East anyway, but I don't really think this hurts them in however far they were going to get.
See, to me, I love this Knicks team, and I would have loved to have picked him again with that OG, with his addition. And look, it's not completely over. It's just that all signs are pointing towards, him being behind the playoff schedule. But nonetheless, I love this Knicks team. I love the way they looked with OG, and I think I honestly would have loved to have seen it happen. And it's a bummer that they're going to have what is, in my opinion, a fascinating team, and we're not going to really get to see it.
Yeah, OG now it's like a tennis elbow thing. Like it just keeps changing with elbow flare up and all this stuff. But if he is healthy, like that's the element that they were missing, right? It's the guy that can guard Tatum. It's the guy that could guard Jimmy Butler. That guy that they didn't have in that Heat series that they lost last year. That's the guy that they more desperately need. That's kind of why I say, like, if you have any karmic energies in New York, you're kind of pushing them in OG Anunoby's way, and maybe not so much the Julius Randle direction. Maybe that's why we're at where we're at. End of season awards are coming up soon, but is there enough hardware to go around? We'll explain next. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Amazon Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into the games, the analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, well, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. Let's first talk about the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class-exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Let's also talk about the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8 in expensive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there with the answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. It's Friday, which means it's time to count down to the weekend with our weekly power rankings.
I'm not a system player. I am a system player. Power rankings. Power rankings.
Adam, what are we counting down this week?
It's awards season, but are there enough awards? I don't think so. I think there are a top 5 list of more awards we could add to the end of year ballot that would spice things up, maybe add something to the game.
I love it. We give voters more stuff to worry about.
More straw
I don't know. I will
polls.
see how much the 65 game limits apply to these. Let's get into it.
Right. Let me give you some honorable mentions that we workshop, but I had to swat these away. Podcaster of the year.
I stand by this one.
I'm not the
player
biggest
podcaster.
Player podcaster. I'm not the biggest one of that. Assistant coach of the year. I like this one because coach and assistant, these are different jobs. I like the idea of there being no, man, that's the assistant. That's the guy that dries up all the plays or creates the defensive scheme. So I like that one. And then I had
that one too, if I could jump in, because I feel like we talk about assistant coaches in the NFL a lot in terms of difference makers.
Coordinators.
You know what I mean? Like we have the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. It's always this big move. I would love to give some shine to these assistant coaches because they do matter a lot in the NBA, but we don't really have a conversation around them as much in the media, at least.
Doc Rivers maybe stop throwing his staff under the bus if there was an assistant.
Yeah, maybe we should have a travel equipment staff of the year too. Milwaukee's evidently would not win, but
eliminated from contention. And then I had shooter of the year, but this one feels like you can't really vote on that. You could just look at the numbers and say, yeah, that guy was the best shooter this year. I think that's how that one would work out. So I had to throw those out. But number 5, the new awards. Owner of the year. So you have coach of the year, you have executive of the year, but the owner plays such a big part. And here's why I want this award. Because I feel like there's a lot of owners out there that would try a lot harder at providing for their fan bases if there was some kind of award at the end. And if you could look out and say, so-and-so's owned the team for 55 years and never won owner of the year, not once. So I like this idea of owners having this thing to compete with that would ultimately make the league a little bit better.
I love this, and I think what it needs to be is almost like a championship belt, but like a trophy or something that moves from office to office. So once you win it, great. But if you don't win it the next year, you have to actually hand the trophy over to the next owner.
Oh, man, like, so you have Dan Gilbert has to give it to Ishbia or something one year, and it's like, oh, it's really
before whatever game they play at the home where the trophy resides previously, and has to be transported to the next one.
I like it. So there you go. Owner of the year. Number 4, the Iron Man Award. Most minutes. You got guys right now, it's like in vogue to rest or this or that. I kind of like if it was, hey, AC Green, 14-time minutes played, award winner.
So total minutes. Who would win right now? Who's your guess?
I don't. I knew Mikal Bridges used to be up there, but I don't know who it is anymore.
Mikal Bridges is second. DeMar DeRozan, number 1 in minutes. Right
now.
I
should have known that. Because he's second in minutes per game, I believe.
Josh Hart climbing the board, though. He's making a late run at this one.
Al, he's adding about 48 minutes a night. I know that. So do the math.
It's every other night. So it's a good one. I like it.
Number 3, Dunker of the Year award. Dunker of the Year was anything to make guys incentivized to add artistry and showmanship. So I like this idea of just like who had the most dunks this year, and it's voted on by a specific panel. I think this year's probably Anthony Edwards. He's got 2 extremely memorable dunks, and he always is dunking. He's always making big dunks. So Dunker of the Year, not if we're doing the dunk contest, nobody wants to Mac McClung as our star or something, whatever. Maybe we get rid of it and we just do Dunker of the Year. Every time you're on a fast break, you are in contention for Dunker of the Year.
I like this. You can have like an NBA app thing that kind of keeps score, like a rolling tally of good dunks and like 9s and 10s of each player. You can just have somebody in charge of that. And instead of getting rid of the dunk contest, what if we actually include the dunk contest in this?
Ooh, you get a bonus.
Incentivize people to actually participate.
Wes, you're a genius, man. I can't believe you just thought of this, man.
I know, on the fly. Let's go.
Get Adam Silver on the phone, man. We're cooking ideas over here. Number 2, and this was your idea. I give you credit here. 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, man. There's almost no similarity between rim protection and perimeter containment, and yet we have to weigh them too, and it always gets a little messy, and bigs almost always win because rim protection is more important than this. Let's just have 2. A rim protector of the year and like a perimeter defender of the year award.
Yep.
2 different, or you just call it Defensive Player of the Year and you give it 2 different awards. I like that. We're grading guys on different scales and it doesn't work.
So let's handicap. So we already know basically the real Defensive Player of the Year this year is going to come down to like basically Rudy Gobert, Victor Wembanyama.
Right.
FanDuel has odds for Bam Adebayo and Jarrett Allen too. So let's kind of call that the handicapping of the rim protector of the year would be those 4. No perimeter players involved in this.
Right.
Who would, if we were to make like a top 3, 4, 5, Herb Jones would have to be on that list.
Our guy,
Herb Jones. I think I would throw Jalen Suggs in there.
You
I would
love
give him some
Jalen Suggs.
odds. I would give him some odds. Who else am I missing here?
Man, I'd have to really sit here and think about it. You put me on the spot here Jaden McDaniels has had a good year. He fouls a little bit more than I like.
Yeah, but he could make the list.
Lou Dort is like a hell of a defender, takes
one.
a lot of big assignments. He could probably be thrown out there. So those are some of the guys that come to mind right off the top of my head. So
I like it. All right.
And then number 1, if we're adding it, Passer of the Year award. Wes, why? Just another award for Yoke. Passer of the Year.
Who else is in this? Halliburton
Could be in the running for Passer of the Year. Luka Doncic.
Luka
might actually be the favorite, man. If you're just talking about like fancy passing.
Yeah, you kind of have to throw Trey Young in here just because he is second in the league in assists. Like, it kind of feels
Listen to us,
disrespectful
though.
not to him.
Think about the argumentation that we can make out of it. This is the whole point of awards, right? As it creates like conversation and arguments.
Mm-hmm.
No, Trey Young doesn't belong on this list. What are we talking about, West?
Stat padding.
Come on.
There was like probably 2 or 3 years within the last 15 years where LeBron and Chris Paul would have been like head to head on this for pretty intensely. So I wish we actually have had this because it would have been really interesting. Because you also get this one. I actually like the sort of the interpositional competition here because that's interesting. Like, how do you differentiate the Luka passing versus the Jokic passing? And that can kind of come down to the voters, which is interesting.
Right. But I think that was what would make it. And also, I just want to incentivize anything that gets guys thinking about that. So when you're on the break, like, okay, I'm going to throw it off the backboard. I'm going to do something a little extra just to make it a little bit more fun.
I just came up with another one to like incentivize players to play, quote unquote, the right way, just for like more ball movement, more entertaining. What if we had off-ball mover of the year?
The fan base is going to be locked into that one, man. I'll tell you what.
Because they track it.
Crazy.
We track the miles ran per game and stuff. Like, you just give it to the guy who racks up the most miles.
Yeah, that's all it is. Huh? Okay.
That's it. Off-ball mover of the year. Just keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Who would be the off-ball mover? The truest sense of this, though, like just great off-ball movement. Is there a guy that comes to mind for this?
Well, Clay.
Yeah.
I would put Duncan Robinson up there.
Duncan, yeah, you're right.
He's awesome.
Yeah,
that's the
you're
guy.
right.
Duncan
Those are
wins
the guys.
Yeah. That's it, right? Those are the awards?
Those are the awards. Add them to the list, Adam Silver.
Add them to the list. We got to get them going. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Everydayers, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.